Hello, I'm going to write out all the forms of luo as an example for you to follow. And you're going to be doing paidewo, the same thing for paidewo, for your first drill. Now I chose luo in the interest of brevity. And remember that paidewo, you can find it conjugated in the back of the textbook, so you can compare your answers when you do yours. So now luo means, in the active, it means to loose or release or destroy. And then in the middle, it means to have someone released. So in other words, to ransom them. So those are the meanings that I'll use when I translate. And I'm going to do this verb in the present tense, both active and middle passive. Remember that the middle and the passive forms look exactly the same in the present. And the imperfect, active and middle passive, again, the same thing is true, middle and passive look the same. And then in the future, the active and the middle. We haven't learned the future passive yet. That's a separate form, which we'll learn later. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And this is what you want to try to be able to do from memory. So starting with the present, and I'm doing the different moods here too, indicative, imperative, and infinitive. So I'm going to start with the present, active, indicative. Take the present stem and add the endings. Luo, lues. Notice how I'm also writing the accents. You need to write the accents. Lue, luomen, luete, and Lucy with a new movable. And then you can just translate the first singular of the indicative. Luo would then be I loose, or release, or destroy. Now if we move to the middle passive, we're going to use the middle passive endings on the same stem. Luomai, lue, remember that's the kind of funny looking ending. Luetai, luometha, lueste, and luontai. And then the first singular meaning would be I ransom. And I have to squeeze it in here. I ransom. Okay, now let's move on down to the present imperative. Second person singular would be lue. And that's a long U, so upsilon, so it's got a circumflex there. And then the plural luete. And both of these would simply mean loose. And then if we move over to the middle, the singular imperative, second singular imperative is luu. And the second plural then would be lueste. And this would then mean ransom. And now if we move down to the third person imperative, so I just did the second person imperative, now the third person imperatives, the third singular will be lueto, as we learned last quarter, and the third plural luonton. And so lueto would mean let him or her loose, and then luonton would be let them loose. And if we move to the middle third person singular imperative is luesto, and plural luesthon, and these would mean then, of course, let him ransom or let them ransom. And then finally, if we move to the infinitive, the active infinitive is simply luane, to loose, and the middle passive infinitive would be luestai, which would mean to ransom. Now notice I've been using the middle endings here, so it could also be passive. It could be to be loosed, or to be destroyed, or to be released in the passive. And similarly up here, luomai could also mean I am being loosed, or released, or destroyed. And the imperative could be loosed, or destroyed. You just, for the passive ending, you just take the active ending and turn it into passive. All right, now we can go to the imperfect. With the imperfect, we add an augment. Again, I'm kind of squeezing it in here. The augment to the present stem, lu, and then add the ending. So we're going to have eluon, Elues, elue, with a new movable. Eluomen, eluete, and eluon. The third plural has the same ending as the first singular. So then I'm not going to write it in here because I don't have space, but you'll be able to work that out on your own. Eluon would mean I was loosing or releasing, or I used to, I kept on loosing. And now if we move to the middle passive forms, we're going to use the same augment and stem, but add the middle passive endings for the imperfect. So it's going to be eluomen, eluu, elueta, eluometha, elueste, and eluonta. That's the imperfect, active, and middle passive. And that's all there is for the imperfect. There's just indicative. There's no imperative or infinitive of the imperfect. Okay, it's only in the indicative. Now if we move to the, sorry, and I didn't translate here, but again, you can write this in when you do this. Eluomed would mean I was ransoming, or I was being released if it was passive. Okay, now moving to the future, we're going to add a sigma, as we always do, and then the same endings as the present. So luso, luces, luce, lusomen, lucete, and lususi with a new movable. And so, of course, again, luso would mean I will loose or release. And now, for the middle, we'll take the same sigmatic form and add the middle endings. Lusomai, luce, or a, either spelling is correct. Lucetai, lusometha, luceste, and lusontai. And so this future middle would mean I will ransom. It would never have a passive meaning in classical Greek. It's going to have the middle meaning I will ransom, because the future passive will be a separate form. Now there's no future imperative, but there is a future infinitive, and it's easy. You simply take the future stem with the sigma and add the infinitive ending. So lusein would mean to loose. And the same thing for the future middle infinitive. Lucestai would mean to ransom, and you would use that, say, after the verb mello, for example. We know that takes a future infinitive. Okay, so I know at some points it's a little bit squeezed here, but I hope this gives you an idea then of how to lay out your forms and all the forms that we've learned, and remind you of some of the things that we've learned. So work on this for paideo, and don't stop there. Especially pick verbs that have consonant stems, so that when you add the sigma, certain things happen, or also verbs that have irregular principal parts, so that you'll work with the different principal parts of verbs. Okay, so go ahead and get to work on that.